All right, let's talk about a brief history of JavaScript. I know this is not the most important thing in the world. I also know this is not the most interesting thing in the world, but it is, in my mind, a fundamental of learning a language. You sort of want to understand where it was coming from in order to project where it is going. And JavaScript to me has a fairly interesting history. So first things first, JavaScript is a relatively new programming language. In fact, it's called JavaScript because it was a scripting language. It wasn't actually a full programming language until recently. It was developed in the year 1995 and it was made entirely in 10 days. Now the JavaScript that we write today is significantly more complex and has taken way more than 10 days to create, but the original JavaScript prototype only took about 10 days. Throughout the late 1990s, going into the early 2000s, a lot of people actually thought JavaScript was a fad because you had to write a programming language to make a website work, and you actually had to write a programming language on the back end so that you could do things like accept payments, and you had to write a programming language on the front end so that you could have small little interactions, and it couldn't do very much back then, so it's understandable to think why it would have been a fad. But then as more people came online and more people wanted interactions, JavaScript actually didn't really take off. Not super well anyways. Flash became the default animation language. Now, as most of us know, Flash is not really around anymore, and it's basically all JavaScript. And that's because Flash had too many security problems, and JavaScript, well, as it was maturing slowly in the background, it was able to do more and more things that Flash was able to do, and eventually just completely replaced it when one day Google and a bunch of other people said, no more Flash. This is a major security problem, and Flash basically was given a timeline, said like, hey, you've got a couple years to live, and then we are cutting your support. We are cutting off your life support, and we are going with JavaScript. So everyone be prepared for that. And that's what ended up happening. And so throughout that period, while Flash was sort of on its last legs, JavaScript really took hold. People really started to adopt it and make it better, and make all sorts of libraries and frameworks that we use today. I had mentioned a few videos ago that JavaScript is the only front-end programming language out there. And, well, that was true at one point and is not entirely true. There are other programming languages you can use on the front end, but they're not really for websites more than they're for programming languages. And the biggest threat to JavaScript's success is this one called WebAssembly, or WASM for short. It actually didn't even get proper browser support until late 2017, early 2018. Now, WebAssembly is basically an actual programming language, a real programming language that runs very, very, very fast. It is much more efficient than JavaScript for your browser. However, it hasn't really taken off. And I think it hasn't taken off because JavaScript grew so quickly through just a few years, really, about a decade. And WebAssembly was late to launch. They were supposed to launch way before 2017 originally. JavaScript simply grew too fast for WebAssembly to catch up. That being said, if WebAssembly did become a standard, that would be a great leap forward for basically every website or any program that's running through a browser. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But hey, that's neither here nor there because we're learning JavaScript, and JavaScript has huge demand today. But it's just good to know that if one day JavaScript was to be replaced for front-end web development, it would probably be by WebAssembly. And so fast forwarding a couple of years, we now have server-side JavaScript called Node.js, and it's massively popular frameworks like React, created by Facebook, and Vue.js. There was another one called Angular, created by Google, and basically Vue.js ate up the entire Angular community, and React is king of JavaScript frameworks. But touching back on that Node.js, basically there is an engine that can read your JavaScript and break it down into very performant code. And so you can write JavaScript and your computer basically, you can think of it as a way as it compiles your JavaScript into C. And then as it's executing your C code, I'm doing air quotes here, but your C code, it is actually way faster. And so this is server-side JavaScript, meaning that you can actually write JavaScript on a Linux machine and actually have it connect to a database and all those things. So that's fairly new. It's fairly popular too these days. And the nice thing about that is you can write one programming language on the front end, one programming language on the back end, and you can write basically any program that you ever need that needs to be connected to the internet. You have JavaScript down pat, and you can do so many things with it. That said, When it comes to server-side languages, it's still not as powerful as languages like Python. Python can do significantly more. For example, a lot of AI, artificial intelligence, and ML, machine learning, is written in Python. It's not written in JavaScript. So that's a brief history on JavaScript. Where it's going to go, nobody really knows. I sort of suspect JavaScript is going to keep taking off. Again, it's the only front-end programming language out there for a website. And so as more and more people come online, it becomes more and more popular. There's no choice. It has to grow. And you can think of it like this. JavaScript is the only child in a family, and so it gets all the attention. Whereas when you talk about other programming languages like C or Kotlin or Java or Python or any other programming language out there, you can basically hot swap most of those. In a sense, you can write an entire program in C. You could also write an entire program in Python. Whereas you don't really have that choice when it comes to front-end web development. And so we always use JavaScript. And I think because of that, JavaScript is really going to take off a lot more than it already has in the coming years.